Well, a very integral conversation that is happening in Mombasa, one that we will keep interacting with in the course of the show and, of course, during our subsequent bulletins right here at K24 TV. Welcome back to the program. Hashtag the Daily Brief at K24 TV and at Sam W. Njoroge. Use that to interact with us online. You can also find us on our SMS platform, that is 21222. And indeed, whatever it is that you raise on those platforms will be in a position to inform our discourse right here in studio. But for now, we need to shift to yet another very critical conversation right here in studio. And we've got the pleasure of hosting Kiprono Kitoni. Now, this is a man who has been at the helm of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And just a few months ago, he was appointed vice chairperson of the World Chamber Federation. Kiprono, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your recent appointment.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to engage you on quite a number of issues. Key among them, what is happening in Mombasa today? What is the economic significance of having Kenya join the League of Oil Exporting Nations?
First of all, I think it's a momentous occasion for Kenya. It is really historical that we become an oil exporting nation. But I think before we start to celebrate, before we pop the champagne, let's ask ourselves very important questions. Is the oil that we have in Turkana, is it commercially viable for exploitation? Will we have a regular pipeline of exportable oils? Is the issue of where the refinery will be located between Kenya, Uganda, and South Sudan, has that been discussed? What is the play of Lamu and the whole Lapsset corridor vis-a-vis the conversation around oil? Put all that aside, I think it's great for us to be an oil exporting nation. But remember that there's been very many times that the debate has been held about, is oil a boon or a bane? And you know, there's examples of best practice like Norway. Norway was a very poor fishing country. It was a middle-income, regular, run-of-the-mill European country. They discovered oil. They have a very, very effective sovereign fund. They have uplifted their GDP to become the wealthiest nation in the world. And they have basically used oil to leverage themselves into a phenomenally successful nation. We can look at Nigeria on the converse of that. And Nigeria is a major oil exporting nation. But it hasn't really been used to develop the country to the extent that it should have been. Nigeria still exports crude and imports finished products. I mean, the distribution of income has not impacted on the average Nigerian. So I think there is a continuum, and Kenya should really, chart the path of making sure that this is used to uplift the economy.
Talking about distribution of the income, it is expected from the figures that we're consuming from government that we shall earn an estimated 1.3 billion from this particular shipment. What becomes the distribution of the same? We've had concern about locals and, give us our rightful share. What should we do moving forward?
You see, I don't think we should focus on the figure of 1.3 billion because, I mean, we are not yet at a viable level of productivity. I mean, this is just early days. I'm sure there's a lot more investment that needs to go into it. I think the more important thing for me is that will this resource be safeguarded jealously enough to make sure that it is used to uplift the well-being of Kenyans? I mean, look at our country today. I mean, our president's doing a tremendously good job in fighting corruption. The agencies of government are at play. Every day focusing on the amount of resources that are being looted left, right, and center in our country. Oil comes into play today, it enhances our revenue base, but we must make sure that we do have a system that actually ensures that this is safeguarded for the betterment of the majority.
And when the government talks about, or even tallow oil for this matter, talking about generation of 200,000 barrels, are we ready for this? At the end of it all, are we ready for it?
I think as a nation, you see, there's a lot of developmental needs. I mean, Kenya is today, I mean, with or without oil, Kenya is on the path to becoming a great nation in this continent of Africa. I have had the privilege of traveling in the position of the chamber presidency, in which I held for 7 years. I've traveled to 73 countries and I've traveled to over 20 African countries. I can tell you, Kenya, despite all the challenges that we face, this is a great nation. We are on the path to greatness, with or without oil. Oil will it'll be a wind-assisted victory for us. I mean, we will be able to move faster to where we should be. But then again, that depends very much on whether or not we can safeguard this for the betterment of the general population.
Kiprono, let's shift our focus a bit to the ongoing 2019 population and housing census.
Yes.
And the generation of the figures therein, in light of national planning, how important is this exercise, even from an economic point of view?
You ask a very important and fundamental question. I mean, we are going through a census. A census is always a good exercise to conduct because it informs you on very many things. First of all, you are able to determine the size of your population. You're able to determine the number of taxable adults that you have in your nation. I mean, Kenya for many years has not been able to go past the glass ceiling of having 4 million taxable accounts.
Yep.
And I, in the Chamber of Commerce, for many years that I served there, I've been arguing that rather than deepen tax collection, we need to broaden the base. And we need to create more opportunities. And devolution was actually intended to devolve opportunities economically. So we need to broaden that and really collect taxes from more people to be able to run the developmental affairs. It also helps because you can focus your economic needs. I mean, you can be able to ensure that you have sufficient housing, you have sufficient electricity, food, and etc. So government is much more targeted in its agenda to uplift the standards of the common people. You also be able to, many times, figures have been bandied about the level of unemployment that we have in Kenya. Some people say we have 20% unemployment, others say it's up to 39%. And you see, through a census, you will be able to actually put a finger on the exact number of people that we have who are, or rather the percentage of unemployed people in our country.
Right.
And yeah, so it helps in very many ways.
Do we need to rethink, though, how we are going about it moving forward?
You see, there's a big debate today about the methodology. Is this the correct methodology? And I think the jury is still out. I mean, we are in the second day of the census, so it's too early to determine has it been a success or a failure. But I do hope, for the sake of our country, for the sake of the taxpayers like myself, that the exercise will be successful and that the outcomes of it will give us accurate information that will help our government to determine how we allocate resources effectively. But having said that, we are in the age of big data. I mean, it is possible to actually collect much more data that we can using other means. I mean, we look at countries like Finland and countries like Sweden. They moved away from actual census that involves the entire population by collecting data from other points, from the taxable adults, from the health requirements, I mean, usage in the health sector, right, from various other means, I mean, telecommunication networks, and give you fairly extensive data. So you see, even if we look, for example, at the political polling that takes place in our country, it's been fairly accurate, I mean, despite what people say. And they use a small sample size. So do we need to really knock on every door and collect that data? I would say that given the level of development our country is in, and still the fact that we have a fairly sizable illiterate population in our country and people who are very economically disempowered, it may be the right decision to go the way that we have gone. But let us wait and see the sort of data that comes out of this exercise and see whether it'll actually be the data that can be used to target and focus planning.
Previous results, I'm very sure, is something that you've interacted with in the course of time. And one of the key components in terms of population characteristics is labor.
Yes.
And being a factor of production, how can we properly analyze and process the figures to ensure that we tap the right potential for economic growth?
There are certain things that are as obvious as night and day. I mean, for example, the fact that our education system has actually churned out very well-educated manpower, but then who really don't have the opportunities to match the training that they have gone through. I'm extremely excited that as a country, we are now focusing on competence-based training. We are a country that has very many people with Bachelor of Arts, law degrees, sociology degrees, basic Bachelor of Science degrees. I'm not saying that they're basic and they cannot be used, but the reality is we have insufficient skills. We have insufficient number of plumbers. If you're looking today for a good plumber, if you're looking for a good mason, if you're looking for a good welder, there is a huge challenge. I mean, we don't have we have a huge unemployment, especially in the youth, but at the same time, we have insufficient skills. So you see, the competence-based training that we are now moving towards is actually going to ensure that we are churning out people that are actually going to meet a need in the society. So rather than go for white-collar employment, then they will be able to actually contribute to economic activity. And
tying that to other events that we've consumed over time, we saw the Ministry of Education give a directive that some of these areas of study need to be capped in terms of enrollment. And education was cited, business administration was another area, journalism too was yet another area. Is it wise for the nation to think along those lines? As you said, we don't need to deepen, we need to expand.
We need to really rethink our manpower complement today. I mean, Kenya, if we look at, we compare ourselves many times with our neighboring countries in Africa. I think we need to compare ourselves with the far more progressive economies of the tigers of Southeast Asia, for example. I mean, we have a very, very hard-working population. There is no doubt about that. We've done quite a lot, and contrary to what anybody may think, actually the years that President Moi was in power, you know, this country moved aggressively into educating the population. And there's a lot of people out there who are trained and who are educated. And I think we really need to rethink our manpower needs. I mean, what are the requirements? What are the basics that these people need to be able to go into gainful employment? How do we make sure that the curse we have today of youth unemployment is dealt with once and for all? Can we create industry? Can we look at the agricultural value chain? I'm really glad to see that the census is also focusing a lot of its questions on agriculture, because as part of one of the Big Four agenda, I do believe that actually one of the fastest ways that we can really springboard this country into a middle-income economy, as envisioned by Vision 2030, is by creating a renaissance in agriculture. So I'm glad to see that agriculture is one of the key questions that are being,
for the first time,
are being put forward in the census. But let me go back to the question of big data. I mean, Kenya today prides itself as a Silicon Savannah. We have the most successful telco in sub-Saharan Africa in Safaricom. Safaricom today, the amount of data that they have for their 29 million subscribers is phenomenal. We are able to conduct surveys even using those platforms to be able to establish exactly where our people are. I mean, we need, part of the census's role is to establish the economic well-being of the population. I mean, the number of vehicles per house, per homestead, the number of people who are in gainful employment, the number of people who are still in schooling and those who are employed, etc. I mean, the electricity, do they have metered electricity? Are they on alternative forms of power? I mean, I think it'll help the country and the government really determine the sort of social amenities that would best suit our growing population. We
are expecting interim results in 3 months, the actual results in 6 months, and properly analyzed results in a year. What would you be looking for as an economist? What would you be looking for as someone who has been within the business sector for a very long time?
I would look at, firstly, defocusing on the ethnic question. You see, a lot of people, especially the political class, will be waiting to see the outcomes, particularly from an ethnic sizing. And in many ways, that might determine the narrative for 2022. In my own opinion, I think we need to have a concerted effort in the political class to make this not the final outcome. I think we need to look at a broader template. We need to not use this as a political tool to determine who has what share of resources come the next elections. I think we need to be looking at the critical issues. I mean, the unemployment, the issues of housing, the issues of electricity, the issues of basic health care, the issues of access to communication equipment. We need to be looking at, you know, how many people have access to data on a regular basis. I mean, we need to use this to actually be able to determine the requirements, the needs of this population.
The government and indeed politicians and even to some extent the corporate sector has been hit hard by an allegation out there that as much as the youth appear to be many, they've become a very romantic conversation to have, but when it comes to action and empowerment, it's very minimal is done around that area. So whatever information we get from this particular census, how can we process it to ensure that it benefits the young crop?
What do you mean exactly? I mean, I am a bit lost.
We will be doing this for the youth. We shall do this for the youth. There will be deliberate investment in this area for the youth. But really, there appears to be a disconnect between the intended purpose and what finally happens on the ground.
I think it's back to policy. I mean, my thinking is that the purpose of such an elaborate exercise to collect data, and this is not purely an a population census, it is also an economic profiling of our people. I am persuaded to think that this is going to be used to actually come up with economic policies that will address the challenges that our society face. What are these challenges? I mean, we do have today the Big Four agenda, but I think the population census that is ongoing will actually even better focus, for example, the housing agenda. What is the density of the population? Which are the areas that require intervention in terms of low-cost housing? Where do we need to position more affordable healthcare, which is another Big Four agenda? What should we do with agriculture to ensure that the production and there is reasonable distance between production and consumption in terms of the agricultural value chain? So in manufacturing, where should we position our factories so we get cost competitiveness in terms of delivery of consumer products that are manufactured to the population? Where should we position the special economic zones that will benefit from a lower energy tariff in order for all these things to actually lead to an economic outcome that is desirable for our people?
Will it be enough time for the Jubilee government to embrace the figures generated from this process and have them inform the Big Four agenda? Or is it a little too late for them?
I think you're asking the wrong person, because I have been personally a little bit critical of aspects of the Big Four agenda. And in fact, I've had many discussions with, for example, P.S. Hinga in housing.
Yeah.
I think the Big Four agenda needs to be split into short, into medium and long-term objectives. It is very good to say that we would like to create 500,000 homes for our growing population. But to say we want to do this within the incumbency of the Jubilee government, in my opinion, is a tall order. I don't think that that is achievable. Firstly, because Kenyans are highly litigious, we embraced a new constitution a few years ago that gives people massive civil liberties. Today, I mean, land is a very emotive issue in Kenya. People want to go to court on any small issue. We don't even have a land commission in place until last week or the week before last. So by the time they go through the learning curve and start to be effective, it will probably take 6 months from now in order to resolve even the land that is the basic driver for the housing agenda. So in my opinion, I don't think the president needs to rush and say, I need to achieve this in the incumbency of my term.
Yes.
I mean, he can create the platform for us to achieve all these things in the fullness of time. If we say that between now and the expiry of Vision 2030, we have all the pillars of the Big Four agenda really firing on all pistons to ensure that we have vibrancy in our economy, it'll be good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
It will be good enough. Short, mid-term goals
but
that
let
are
me address,
achievable. Yes.
Let me address the issue of the timeliness of the outcomes of the census.
Yes.
The last census actually took a year for any information to come out. What does that do? It creates doubts, it creates speculation about the information and about tampering of that data. I think the government, particularly the CS of Interior and the CS of Information, they need to be very clear about the way this data is going to be handled in order for it not to be manipulated to determine a political narrative in 2022. That is a very crucial thing. I'm extremely excited by them saying that the first information will come out in December, and I do hope that that will be the bulk of the information and the data that we require, because delays lead to speculation.
That's very true.
Yes.
And even the timing of the results of this particular exercise. Remember that the delimitation of boundaries is supposed to be conducted by IEBC at least 12 months before the general election. So any person would wonder what will then become priority of government. Is it the political boundaries, or having the data generated from this process inform critical aspects of the economy, growth, the Big Four agenda, and all that? We'll be right here to make sure that we cover each and every angle to the results that will be generated by this process. But for now, Kiprono Kitoni, thank you so much for coming in for the show.
Thank you.
And it has been a pleasure hosting you right here on the Daily Brief. That is Kiprono Kitoni, formerly the National Chair of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and currently the Vice Chairperson of the World Chamber Federation. It has been an interesting conversation. We do hope that it will shape the discourse of the nation moving forward.
All right, of course, quite an insightful interview there, and that was Kiprono, of course, Kitoni, who had a lot to say with regard to the oil exportation that Kenya will be kickstarting in 2022. And of course, we'll be covering other stories of the day. Well, right now, taking you directly to what's happening. Well, we have two very important live events. And of course, in Uasin Gishu today, DP Ruto is going to be launching the first palliative care center, and of course we're taking you directly over there on your screens. As you can see, that is from Uasin Gishu County. Approach that improves the quality of life of patients, just in case you had no clue, and families facing these problems associated with life-threatening illnesses. Now, a few of the things that are going to be happening in this particular center include the fact that there will be relief that will be provided to patients who suffer from pain and other distressing symptoms. There's also going to be a part where we will be integrating the psychological and spiritual aspects of patient care in this particular center in the new hospital in Uasin Gishu County. This center will also be offering a support system to help the family cope during the patient's illnesses and in their own bereavement. It will also be offering a support system to help patients live as actively as possible. Apart from that, they will also be enhancing quality of life and may also positively influence the course of illnesses. So yes, indeed, not just for the patients, but it is for the entire family as well, who are going to be suffering, not just psychologically as well as physically. So yes, that is the absolute first center in Uasin Gishu that has been launched today by DP Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And yes, those are pictures still on your screens from Uasin Gishu County, as you can see. So we will be telling you more details regarding what exactly happens later on in our subsequent bulletins to do with this palliative center care. Apart from that, we also have other live events that we're going to be covering. And right now, taking you from Uasin Gishu County to Nakuru County, where we have our reporter Kigodho, who is going to be giving us more details regarding what's happening today in the area. He's going to be getting us up to speed with the latest in Nakuru County. And as we can see, he's got locals in the area behind him who are going to be telling us what they're experiencing currently to do with the human-wildlife conflict in the area. Kigodho.
Yeah, Sheksha Aurora, we are coming to you live from Lake Nakuru village. We can say it's just an estate that has been constructed closer to Lake Nakuru National Park. And today we are not going to be so serious. Today we are going to bring to you live coverage of a monkey business because monkey has become a menace in this village, whereby a woman has been grabbed of his goods, that is bread, milk, and some of commodities that she's going to be cooking for the family. Others have been beaten up. Others have been even assaulted by these monkeys. What exactly are these monkeys looking for in human territory? This is what we call human-wildlife conflict. And this area, as my camera person can just pan a little bit, we are closer to Lake Nakuru National Park. And this is what exactly is happening. From where I see it, there is a live wire, or what we call electric wire, that is not so high as to deter any animal from coming from there. Now, if my cameraman can just allow us to take just some few questions from these residents, they tell us exactly what are these monkeys up to and what do they do, and have they tried to interact with the Kenya Wildlife Service so that they can be able to be assisted. Karibu sana kwenye K24 asubuhi ya leo. Pengine unaweza kutuambia, je, ni mambo yapi mmekuwa mkipitia kuhusiana na hawa nyani ambao wanawasumbua?
Kwa majina ni Glaze Maina kutoka Lakeview. Mimi hapa hivi chenye naweza sema, yani hao wanyama wanga watueki na amani hata kidogo, kwa sababu upande ya mashamba huwezi panda kitu chochote. Kama ni mboga huwezi panda, hata kunde huwezi panda, mandizi huwezi vuna kitu chochote. Upande wa nyumba tunaishi nje, kwa sababu nyumba unyesha ndani. Yani hata tunashindwa ni aje masaka ni mtoto imefikia masaa yake ya kutokelezea ikifikia, inawapata watoto hapa ndani kwa proti, inakosesha watoto amani. Inatupata hata kwa nyumba masaa ya lunch ikifikia hatuwezi enda dukani. ikipatana na wewe kama wewe ni mwanamke inaacha kama imekujeruhi, wengine inatupiga, sasa tunashindwa ni aje, tunaomba usaidizi.
Kuna kisa ambacho kwamba umesema kwamba kuna wanawake ambao wananyaganywa vile vitu ambavyo wametoka sokoni na pengine wengine hata wanaumwa. Je, ni ukweli?
Yangu ni ukweli, kwa sababu hata kunaye mtoto aliyeumwa, mamake alikuwa pale gerezani, ikaweza kuuma mtoto wa miaka 13, na wakati mamake alipokuja akajaribu kwenda kuomba pale usaidizi na kushughulikiwa hata kidogo.
Na mmeweza kuongea na shirika la wanyama porini jinsi ya kuweza kusaidiana?
Iko wakati yenye walituita mkutano pale Choma, na wakati yenye walituita maongeo yenye walikuwa naongea, walisema sisi wenyewe ni sisi watu tunapea hao wanyama chakula, na sisi hatuna chakula za kumwaga ovyo ovyo. Yani venye wakifungulia tu wanyama wao wanakuja direct kwa manyumbani mwetu, na hata tunashindwa ni aje. Ukiangalia hata manyumbani mwetu chakula za kumwaga tutatoa wapi sisi wenyeji?
Those are sentiments from the women who are in this area. Let's get a look at what men go through because of these monkeys. Je, baba, hawa nyani wanawapea heshima kama wanaume, ama bado hata nyinyi mko katika giza ama katika vita nao?
Kusema ukweli, mimi naitwa Joram Karanja, mkazi wa hapa Lakeview. Na tumekuwa tukisumbuana na hizi nyani na nugu, hasa nugu ndio shida kubwa. Heshima zinatupa wanaume, kwa sababu kina mama saa zingine wakienda kupita inabidi wangoje mwanaume ambaye anapita njiani ili kwamba aweze kuvuka. Wengi ambao wanauza bidhaa zao za matunda na nini wamenyang'anywa na nugu hapa mama. Huwa heshimu wa mama. Alafu pia shida ni kwamba saa zingine hata watoto wadogo inabidi inabakura kitu haraka haraka ili kwamba kunyang'anya mtoto. Ukirudi kutoka nje ishapanda juu ya mabati ishaenda. Sasa hizo ndio shida ambazo tulizo nazo. Sio kwamba tungependa ziwe zinakuja hapa mtaani. Tungependa kama zingewezekana zizuiwe kule. Na zaidi sana shida ni hizi mitaro zikiwa na chafu. Alafu nazo nugu zinakuja zinachakura zinapata chakula huko. Zinaweza hata tuletea kipindu Ebola. Hatuwezi jua ni ugonjwa gani zaleta. Na unajua ni makosa sana ndugu.
That's a new disease, kipindu Ebola. Haya basi mama, pengine wewe kama mkazi wa hapa, wewe ambaye uko kwa nyumba 10, mmefanya kazi gani nyinyi kama watu wa nyumba 10 na pia sheria zimefuatwa kuweza kuona kwamba wale wameathirika na kuumwa na hawa wanyama wameweza kupata usaidizi?
Kwa majina naitwa Mary Wangari Mwangi, na mimi nimeishi hapa, hata nimelelewa hapa tangia nursery mpaka wakati huu. Mimi naitwa Nyanya na ningali niko hapa Lakeview. Kitambo kidogo hatukuwa na hizo wanyama ambazo zinaitwa baboons. Kulikuwa na zile tumbili, na tumbili hazikuwa zinakuja nyumbani. Sasa hizi zinakuwa zinasumbua watu sana, ni kwa sababu ni mnyama mkubwa na mzito, na tena ni kama anajua mwanamume na mwanamke. Na tena akienda kuingilia kama ni biashara, wale wamejenga vibanda, lazima akae pale na rungu ili alinde matunda yake yenye anauza pale. Kupitia hiyo hali tumeita mkutano na maafisa wa game, na tunajitetea kwao, na maafisa wa hospitali waje wafundishe ni hadhari gani ziko kwa kuumwa na nugu, lakini hakuna hatua yoyote imechukuliwa. Kwa hivyo tungeomba serikali yetu ingilie kati, ione kwamba hawa wanyama wamezuiwa kule msituni na wanadamu wajikaishe peke yao, kwa sababu imetuletea adhari kubwa sana. Hata mtoto wa nursery school wachekechea hata hezi jilinda nayo, inamwangusha na inamnyang'anya tin, inamgwara mpaka matumbo. Sasa na wazazi hawana pesa, na shindano moja ni 750. Hiyo itakuwa aje? Kama inawezekana watusaidie, serikali ingilie kati ili tuweze kuwa na amani hapa mtaani Lakeview. Asante.
Shiksha Aurora, if you have to come to this village and this estate of Lakeview, you have to be armed with a KWS ranger so that you can be able to be protected from these baboons who are making this life here miserable for these people. They are also saying that their plants and the other vegetables have been destroyed by these baboons, and they are calling on the KWS to be active and also to come and maybe mitigate this problem. From Nakuru County, my name is Kigodho Mwangi. I take you back to Shiksha Aurora in our studios so that she can continue with the day's brief.
Right, of course, that is Kigotho, and he's going to be giving us more details later on. In 2013, by the way, just to give you some context regarding the same, Nakuru residents were still complaining about the menace that was caused by monkeys in the area. And of course, we'll be telling you what happens later on. Well, for now, on our screens, as you can see, this right here, it is a procession of cars that are moving to, that's in Peponi area. And of course, this is to do with the tax evaders, the case that has been ongoing, and we'll be giving you more details about this on your screen. Right now you can see these are live pictures, and after this we will be taking a break. So yes, as soon as we get more details on this, we'll be bringing you live coverage on the same right here on the K24 Daily Brief. For now, we'll be taking a short break. We'll be right back. Make sure you don't go anywhere and keep interacting with us on our social media pages at K24 TV. The hashtag, remember, is hashtag K24 Daily Brief. We'll be right back.